I was a Belfast war baby, but I knew nothing of the Second World War when it was happening. After all, I was only a year and 9 months when the war ended in September 1945. By the time I was about six, though, I started to hear all about it. And boy, did I hear all about it. Did you notice that crack in your bedroom ceiling that happened when a huge bomb landed in Ormeau Park about a mile away? My father informed me one day. Each time we passed a bomb site, he would say, "There used to be a whole row of houses there. They disappeared one night during the Blitz." Or, "There used to be a factory there. It was destroyed by fire when the bombs meant for the shipyard and the aircraft factory missed their targets. All the workers lost their jobs." You see, Dad had been an air raid warden, so I had plenty of stories to tell. But why was he so obsessed with the war? After all, it ended 5 years before. To me, it was history. Mind you, now at 76, 5 years ago seems like last month. Strange how one's perception of time changes with age. But memory of the war was clearly very vivid for my father. Growing up just after the war was simply normality for me. We had very little, but that didn't matter. We weren't aware of what we were missing. Indeed, most of what we now take for granted hadn't even been invented. Take food, for example. No, I don't mean takeaway food, for that was still a long way off. The range of food available was very limited. Some was still rationed until 1954 when I was 10. Rationing meant that each week families were allowed certain fixed quantities of the basics, such as bread, butter, milk, and vegetables. Rationing resulted in some interesting side effects. Mum had come from a farm, and some of my aunts still lived on farms, so on visits to see them we were able to bring back one or two otherwise scarce commodities such as butter made on the farm. And it stank. Farm-produced butter was high in butyric acid, so it smelled and tasted of vomit. Mother loved it. It was what she had been used to, but I hated it. Back to the rationing. There were ration coupons for confectionery. Yes, sweeties. We could only have, say, one small bar of chocolate or a quarter pound, it's 113 grams, of aniseed balls or humbugs to last us for a week. Imagine the ecstasy when that came to an end, and we could go to Miss Martin's sweet shop on the Ormeau Road and choose from what was available. It wasn't long before we could get ice cream, either a poke or a slider. How exciting it was when a new cereal appeared on the shelves. See, Rice Krispies joined cornflakes as the breakfast choice, unless, of course, you were offered porridge. I wasn't too keen on porridge myself, but it was definitely not as hard to stomach as the dreaded milk puddings. These included semolina, tapioca, and the worst of all, sago, which had the consistency of frog spawn. Young ones nowadays don't know how lucky they are. Of course, in the early 1950s, TV hadn't yet arrived, at least not in Belfast. You may well ask, what did he do for entertainment? Well, for the very young, there was Listen with Mother on the BBC Home Service, one of only 2 radio stations. After the musical introduction, Bercues from 4A's Dolly Sweet, the presenter asked, "Are you sitting comfortably?" And I'll begin. A short story was read. Exciting, or what? I suppose it was a forerunner of CBeebies, but on the radio. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and that was true when it came to playtime. In the immediate post-war period, toys were in very short supply, at least where I lived, so improvisation was the order of the day. With westerns becoming popular, cowboys and Indians were a regular played game. A baton with a bent nail for the trigger became a rifle, while a bamboo cane and string formed a bow, and another cane the arrow. The most ambitious DIY toy job was when my cousin Dennis and I made our own guider, more widely known as a soapbox. As well as a board to sit on, we needed 2 wooden axles, one pivoting to provide steering. The most innovative feature was the wheels, which were discarded steel ball bearings. The racket these made on our concrete path was deafening, and the lack of friction with the ground meant a serious lack of grip. But it taught us a lot about how to handle a skid. See, things were looking up when I was 7. I was given a bike for my birthday. There were rally bikes at that time, but mine was a Bitzer. Bits of this and bits of that. However, I got great use and enjoyment out of my bike. One modification I employed was to simulate a motorbike sound. How? Well, quite easily. With a piece of stiff cardboard attached by clothes peg to the rear forks and protruding into the spokes so that it revved when the back wheel turned. Our inventiveness stretched to athletics too. On 6th of May 1954, Roger Bannister ran a mile in under 4 minutes. This momentous record was covered in all the newspapers and on the radio. Naturally, my friends and I wanted to test ourselves in this regard. After pacing out our block, we reckoned that 1 lap was 1/4 of a mile, so 4 laps should be about a mile. Off we went, trying to get near a time of 6 minutes. The fact that we came close was more a reflection of measurement error than of athletic prowess. You see, around this time, plastic products were becoming increasingly common. Many, such as toothbrushes or combs, arrived with little fanfare, but when one of us got a plastic football, that was different. Street football was on. The gap between the gas lamp posts and the adjacent walls or fences made handy goal mouths, and the fact that there were 2 parallel curbs running up each side of the pitch was neither here nor there. We did our best to keep the ball out of the neighbours' gardens, not only to let the game flow, but to circumvent ensuing discussions. Of course, a big part of our lives was attending school. I went to Rosetta Primary School, just off the Ormeau Road. Most of the teachers were female, and my first encounter with a male teacher was in P7, it's the equivalent to Year 6 in England. Mr. Johnston, who was a superb teacher. There were 40+ pupils in the class and no classroom assistants. To the best of my memory, none was needed. As well as covering the basics, the 3 R's, Mr. Johnson introduced us to geography. One such lesson was about drumlins, the glacial deposits which created a landscape described as basket of eggs topography. This covers much of County Down. I well remember one classmate venturing to suggest that it should really be called County Up and Down. Thanks to Mr. Johnson, we also encountered French. It was at this point we learned that Ormeau meant young elm. More widely, things were steadily changing as the country in general and Belfast in particular emerged from the legacy of wartime. Old practices and technologies were given way to new ones. For example, the daily milk delivery, which had still been conducted by a horse-drawn cart, gave way to the milk float. And who thinks that electric vehicles are a 21st century concept? Electric milk floats, and bread vans too, were the standard mode of home delivery in the 1950s. However, as with many technological advances, there was a downside. The departure of the horse-deprived father of a valuable source of fertilizer for his roses. The upside was I no longer had to go and pick it up. Greater affluence brought fridges and washing machines into homes. Televisions were becoming must-have items, especially around the time of the Queen's coronation in 1953. TV news meant that the big wide world was on display in our living rooms. And in 1955, we moved house, still within the area, and I moved school. The Bitzer was eventually replaced with a rally. Street games gave way to some more serious pastimes and to study, and, one way or another, this Ormeau Boy's horizons were greatly expanded.